go ahead and kick us off here. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us for this conversation that might seem a little bit wordy and long-winded, but how we can help you with thinking about talent acquisition with realistic job previews and psychometric tools, and most importantly, connecting that within your applicant tracking system. So I know we have a lot of different people here. We have people here that might be completely new to applying any type of HR technology into your hiring process. We have some experts here with using assessment tools and using HR tech, but we really welcome everyone and are excited to share more about what we do, what for me is my life's passion, and to get to know you a little bit better as well. So I am joined here. I'm Jennifer Hugo. I'm with Corvirtus, and I'm the managing director and owner. And I'm joined here with our fantastic partner, ATS OnDemand, specifically Nicole Nordelio, who is the client success and senior specialist of client success, I guess would be the best way to word
Yes.
it. And is just a phenomenal one person of a phenomenal team that is just an exceptional partner to us. And we work together to deliver CorvirtusHire, which is an applicant tracking system, to our clients. So Nicole, welcome. And I also have with me Tanya Gonzalez. Tanya is just a core foundation to our team, as some of you on this webinar know. She's been with us for going to be 20 years this August, which is just mind-boggling to think about, and just really leads our client support and client relationships. She's our director of client relationships, and it's just phenomenal with knowing everything about our solutions and being our logistics manager and keeping things moving forward. So with that, we're absolutely thrilled to kick things off today. So to give you the lay of the land as we move forward, we just went through introductions. So a good focus of today is just going to be talking about why to consider having assessments, psychometric data-driven assessments as part of your talent acquisition recruiting process, and then the nuts and bolts of how to do that. And we thought our partner, ATS OnDemand, they actually reached out to us about just talking about the process of how you build a hiring system that has both assessments and maybe some other tools as well, like realistic job previews. Nicole and Tanya and I just recently partnered with a couple organizations to do some cool things with hiring, with both realistic job previews as well as interviewing, to intensely educate and be very intentional about how we educate candidates throughout the process, whether that's them going through an experience online where they receive information or maybe put in critical incidents about how they might perform and receive real live feedback in real time about their potential, or if it's even having some tools within the applicant tracking system to standardize and create some structure and even accountability for recruiters and managers with interviewing. And a key part of the interview is not just screening the candidate, but also selling and educating the candidate about your culture, about your operations. And so Nicole's been a phenomenal partner, as well as the whole ATS OnDemand team, with helping us do that for some of our clients as well. So we'll talk about, Nicole will actually lead a demo of how assessments can live within your applicant tracking system, and with specifically the ATS that we have together called CorvirtusHire. And we'll talk about some tools, some best practices for streamlining, some things to think about with the hiring process. And we should have ample time for a Q&A as well, and talking about some future trends and ideas before we wrap up today. There is a Q&A or a chat in the webinar, so please feel free to use that. We'll consult that at the end to make sure we get to all of your questions. And with that, I will go ahead and just share a little bit about us, because I know some of you may not be as new to, or maybe new to Corvirtus, or maybe have, we're thrilled to have some great clients with us as well that we support. So we have been in business for 40 years, actually, this year. So Tanya and I were a little bit later to the party. And our passion is building remarkable places to work that build up people, as well as building and accelerating business results and growth. So that's what really keeps us going every day. And the name of our company, Corvirtus, which I know can be a little bit confusing to spell, really means core and virtue are in it together, and that means heart as well as values. And so, with really anything we do, we want to try to understand what the culture is of the organization. What's your mission? What's your vision? What are you trying to achieve? And that grounds the hiring process, is one piece of what grounds the hiring process for us. In addition to understanding what you need in each specific role and each specific job group and building the hiring process from there. We take a full view, a holistic view of the hiring process. So everything from how you attract the candidates, their first touch points. We often think about things in terms of a series of moments. What are the different moments that the candidates are going to experience? Where might there be vulnerabilities? How can we make things stronger? And thinking about that from recruitment and their first second with you, their first exposure to the role, all the way through the interview and hiring decision, and then how we can support you with additional analytics to have continuous improvement with the hiring process. So, what are the key metrics in your business that a restaurant server or a nursing assistant, a nursing aide that we're going to be talking about later, can control? How can we measure those and make sure that we're starting to see improvements right away in how those roles are performing over time and how they're driving the success of your business? And that's how we start to create that remarkable place to work where the business is successful as well as the people, and you have the right people in the right seats. We also have solutions that are often interconnected with employee development. So the assessments are going to give you information about how you develop and how you retain your people. That's part of the power of the solution. So with how you're developing people and how you're engaging in succession planning and retention and building your bench strength, we can tap into that and use some of that data as well to further refine the assessment so that you have the right people when you need them. There also might be some ways to build in and interconnect any employee listening that you might be doing. So, whether that's an employee engagement experience survey, exit interviews, what you're seeing in the field, and attach that and use that as an input into the hiring process. So, if you're seeing that maybe teammates, employees are struggling with fast change, we can build into the assessment some ways to select for resilience and some of those core qualities that are necessary for success. And then just a little bit about me. I have a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, another mouthful. And that's really just the science of living that passion that I talked about building remarkable places to work that really add to people, help them grow, nourish them and their well-being, as well as, very importantly, drive the success of the organization and build results over time. So there's a lot of different providers in the people space, and industrial organizational psychology very much focuses on the science of things and making sure that if we're implementing X, that it drives Y, and Y was what we wanted to focus on. So with that, I will hand it over to Nicole to share a little bit more about ATS OnDemand, and then I'll go back to CorvirtusHire.
Perfect. Thanks, Jen. Now, a little bit about ATS OnDemand, as of course, I know we have some of our own clients that are registered for today's webinar as well, where they might be firsthand on this, but anybody that's new, of course, and wanting to know a little bit about our side. We've been in the market for about over 20 years or so. And this is our mid-sized type of solution where this company with the recruiting process is a little bit different and structured probably from other ATSs that you might have worked with in the past or are currently working with. One of the reasons with that is it's a pay-as-you-grow type of solution. So one of the great things about that meaning is you don't have to fit into a certain package. You don't have to fit into a certain type of grouping just to be able to utilize the system and the solution. If you're certainly looking to come on into an ATS to be able to streamline your process, but just posting jobs, and maybe it's the beginning stages of just being able to go electronic, posting and recruiting, managing and communicating with candidates, you'll absolutely be able to achieve that. But one of the great things about ATS OnDemand and partnering, of course, with even companies like Corvirtus and other payroll companies to really streamline and build out your entire suite and process is that you'll be able to also enable additional tools that might be very key and important to your recruiting process. As you might start on out, like I mentioned, with just being able to post report, and communicate with some of those candidates. But as companies grow, as technology and in today's industry, you're definitely seeing more AI come on into it, or even just the ability of connecting more types of abilities with onboarding and texting. You'll be able to streamline that process just a little bit further to be able to instantly communicate with your candidates. You'll be able to send on out that electronic paperwork, where no longer are those days of waiting in that office to come on in and fill out everything by hand. You can complete that before they even come on in and step foot into your building. And of course, with that, like I said, it's a pay as you grow type of option. So some of those tools you might need right from the get go. Other tools down the line you may want to start implementing. Even, of course, with these assessments, being able to tie that on into your recruiting process to be able to allow and building on out that full suite as, of course, your company may need. And we work with those seamless integrations, and those integrations will allow you to build on out that full platform to be able to literally handle everything from job posting all the way through to onboarding and even implementing that into your payroll solution to be able to send over that new hire paperwork all throughout those different integrations we work with some of those different vendors, of course.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. That was really a fabulous introduction and overview, and covered a lot. I think I might just provide a little bit more nuts and bolts to what you just eloquently said. We work across the entire employee journey, so we love to do all the things, whether it's talking about employee engagement and retention and development, and we have assessments and strong psychometric tools for all of that. But we really needed a partner with rich expertise and strong tools for the applicant tracking piece. And that's what we were really seeking. And that led to well over 5 years ago, establishing, if not longer, this partnership with ATS OnDemand and Nicole and her team. And really what led us to that are these four categories here. So the strong infrastructure that they have in place in order to connect with your job boards. A lot of times, like Nicole was saying, we see a broken system with Indeed and other job boards where things aren't interconnected. Maybe there's a homegrown way to capture candidates on your website. And so just a way to have everything in one place and have some of these automations for screening, for streamlining, and for hire. They have a rich CorvirtusHire and our partners have a rich marketplace of tech providers, whether it's for onboarding, for background checks, for other things that you need, in addition to efficiency driving tools like text messaging, the ability to text message candidates from the portal instead of from your ATS, instead of having to manage your phone and have things be messy and potentially let things fall away. We work with a lot of geographically distributed businesses or even departments that it can be difficult to get on the same page. And so you can have automated communications that have been signed off on. Everyone agrees in and believes that this is the right messaging that we want to send to the candidate when we're saying, oh, we're sorry, we filled this opening, or the next step is the interview. And so you can have that automated communication that's engaging, that's connecting, and the ability to customize it if you need to for that candidate, but making sure that that stays front of mind. And then even to be able to highlight candidates that scored well on the assessment, so that we have some clients where they have a view, the default view is to show only assessments that were passing or where the candidates had higher scores. So that way you're set up for success and your managers are set up for success, because it's a lot different when you, the hiring lead or expert, is doing the process and has your hand on every single candidate. But when that starts to spread out to recruiters, to other leaders in your organization, it's harder to have that assurance that every candidate is having the experience that you wanted them to have. And even more now, more than ever, it's so important that every touch point be well executed, well thought through in that hiring process. Tanya, Nicole, anything that I missed on that topic before we move on?
No, I think you covered everything perfectly.
Okay, excellent. So now we'll get into some of the different aspects and some different reasonings to start off with of things that the hiring process, when you have assessments and other tools like realistic job previews, which Nicole is going to show you in a moment, why that could be so important, where to start, how to think about it all. So first of all, as I mentioned, culture, I was going to say Corvirtus, culture is really the difference that makes the difference, as you all know, from being, leaders and involved in the people and hiring space. And so assessments allow you to focus on, and specifically our assessments, on what are the competencies and what is the culture that you're striving to create, the mission, the values, the vision that you're trying to align everyone behind, and what you need them to be able to think, feel, say, and do in order to make that culture consistent and to make performance happen. We know that, hiring has been identified as a key challenge again and again, looking at, we're at the start of the year relatively, trends list comes out, and HR leaders as well as C-level leaders keep identifying hiring as a core challenge, even as the, especially the white collar market starts to chill a little bit. It's still, for those roles that we do have open, how are we going to fill them? And so many organizations, have evergreen hiring or just continual roles that they need to fill. So where we start is looking at your culture, looking at those competencies, and we have ready to implement, as well as the ability to tailor or build custom assessments, as well as experiences like realistic job previews to help you with that hiring. Then you're able to really let the assessment do a lot of the work for you before you interact with a candidate in a meaningful way. So you can deploy the assessments at any point in the hiring process. We recommend early, either, perhaps automatically going out right after the application is complete, or after an initial screen, perhaps the assessments are sent to the candidates after you see that they meet basic qualifications. And we'll work with you to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page on what that means, so that everyone has, an equal opportunity to take the assessment if they're qualified. And so that gets at that greater accuracy piece. You're having, the candidate invest 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the nature of the role and the job demands, with that assessment, giving you a lot of detailed information on those core competencies, the connection with their culture, the ability to execute on the things that you need. And then you have that for the interview. We also have hiring tools, interview tools for hiring, where you might be able to go back and look and see, the manager might be prompted to say, okay, this person said they had this availability or the willingness to engage in these tasks and expertise. And so I'm going to go and follow up and just verify that in the interview, so that there's that even stronger consistency. If we're, a healthcare practice or manufacturing restaurants where we need set availability, we can, easily access that and have a template for the interview where the interviewer knows they need to go in and ask that again. So we're just increasing efficiency. We're also making sure that candidates are educated, engaged, and excited. So a key part that's easy to overlook with hiring is that education part, that we're informing them about the core qualifications, about our culture. And that's where the realistic job preview comes in, with giving them real-time feedback on how they connect with the culture, with core situations. We might go in and look at, well, why are people leaving? Where is that painful churn coming from in the first 90 days? And then build in opportunities, questions, expose them to information, ask them, how would you enjoy being part of a organization that gives you, consistent feedback on how you're doing, where you always have a development plan, you always have a set learning objective in front of you that you're expected to conquer by a certain timeline, expected to have that mastery. And if they can honestly say whether they agree or they disagree, if that would be something that they would value, and then they're provided with real-time feedback. It's also usually between just the candidate and the computer. So you as the hiring manager don't see the results of the realistic job preview. It's between them, just to create that point of education. But that doesn't mean that later you can't follow up. And the same with assessments. Assessments start to communicate what your expectations are. If your assessments measure some of those softer skills that we're seeing it's being so key, like teamwork, communication, you're getting that information. And then you're also getting targeted, recommended follow-up questions for the interview in the assessment result. So all of that adds to increased efficiency, as well as a candidate pool that's more has greater capacity for being engaged, is more likely to be successful, more likely to move with you through the hiring process. We're also providing a enhanced candidate experience. And so this is something that's kind of become a passion of mine, that an assessment does not need to be a double-edged sword. It's not something that we need to make them sort of suffer through in order to get to the next step, in order for us to have the benefits of the assessment. Assessments should be a value add. And there's research by the Talent Board uh, and others, and our own research supports that candidates value having an assessment. It shows like they're intentional when the assessment is viewed as fair, engaging, giving the opportunity to perform. It's a value add. It adds to the experience. And it also provides a way for the candidate to demonstrate that they care, that they value the opportunity. If they're not willing to sit through, an appropriate length of assessment, so maybe a 10-minute assessment for a frontline entry-level role, like a server, or like a nursing aide, something like that, or maybe a 30-minute assessment for a manager or a corporate role, what is their engagement going to be with you later in the hiring process, and most importantly, as an employee? Assessments also kind of keep people on the same road, keep all of your managers together. So most of the organizations that I saw register for the webinar, we either know you already and love working with you, or you're part of an organization where there's probably multiple hands, multiple hiring managers, recruiters involved. And, we all bring our own lens to the world and to how we see hiring. It's easy when we just had a challenge in the workplace, some sort of setback that we had to deal with, to bring that into the hiring process and maybe hold people to a certain standard that may or may not be the best standard. So some of these tools really keep us focused on what the job requires, and also just keep the process moving and provide that standardization. And then to that point, we also have a lot of information for learning and onboarding. So more and more, we're seeing the hiring process be connected to how we learn, how we support employees with learning and development. And that's so important. And so with that, we can have faster training. So our assessments will rank order from greatest area of opportunity to greatest strength, and then provide recommendations for how to maximize those strengths, particularly within the first few months. So if I'm bringing Tanya onto the team, and I know that she's fantastic. Well, Tanya's fantastic with so many things, but let's say the assessment result particularly showcases her skill in communication and team building. It will educate me and say, give Tanya some, communicate some things to communicate that might be a little bit more complicated. Maybe give her some coaching opportunities with new people or a new customer to work with. She'll be great at that. That'll really help set her up for success, because we know, regardless of whether it's a frontline role or a C-level leader, those first few months are just critical. And so the more information we can have to support their success early, to say, oh, they might struggle with confidence. Maybe they're early in their career. They're just a person that came across with the assessment as struggling with confidence. You can know that going in and make sure that they have that time to build up their confidence, make sure that they understand, what they need to do, that they feel good about it before you launch them into it. Or if they're that person that maybe struggles with communication, that's coming across, you can make sure that they have the supports, which is just so valuable, pays dividends overall, particularly when we're seeing that the cost of turnover can be upwards of half of a person's salary to start. And then all of that, supports our culture, provides that stability, whether it's managers. We know that everything starts with stable, high-performing managers across all of your teams, that's so critical, or, just not having that churn on frontline to mid-level roles. All of that starts to build that retention, which allows your culture to flourish and grow over time, and for you to achieve that intended vision that you had to start off with. So with that, I'll go a little bit more into realistic job previews, which I just talked about, but this will just give you an in-depth example of what we can accomplish with a realistic job preview. So what I have here is just a screenshot, and Nicole will share a little bit more later, but you can see some of the, questions here, things around rejection. So, maybe this is a sales role, and it is a sales role, and we want to make sure that this person can deal with rejection. We know that the majority of the labor market right now, hiring managers are hiring for potential. They're either hiring people that are maybe from a different industry, or we're all moving cross-functionally across the labor market. And so we're looking for people that are going to be able to perform in our specific area of the business, in our industry, when maybe they don't have an apples to apples comparison. We're not looking at their experience so much anymore. We're trying to understand what they can do, their potential in the future. So understanding for someone who maybe hasn't been in a sales role, maybe they've been fantastic in customer support and they're wanting to move into sales. Well, maybe they haven't thought in so much detail about rejection or some of the other demands working independently. Maybe your industry, your specific job, your culture values independence a lot more, or maybe there's differences in the tools and the resources and the how of work is done than maybe some of your competitors. So in the restaurant industry, for example, sometimes servers have server assistants that work alongside them. Maybe you have that, maybe you don't. And this would be a great opportunity to educate them on the core things that are foundational to the job, that are also maybe contributing to some struggles or even turnover and churn early on in the employee journey. So we have that question. Another key one, especially for salaried roles, is work hours. There's continuous debates going back and forth and different thoughts on how many hours people want to work, from pushback from the workforce, leadership ongoing. So being able to understand that and feel confident that your candidates know that, okay, for a salaried role, we expect 50 hours. If you're a restaurant manager, if you're a sales manager, you're going to need to be working in general around 50 hours a week, putting in a little bit of extra time. Or if it's a part-time role, if it's the reverse, if we're hiring for a nursing aide and it's going to be 20 to 30 hours a week, we might want to really make clear and even over communicate that. I used to be a college professor before I joined Corvirtus, so I know about the value of just like over communicating. Okay, so this is not going to be a full-time role right away. It's going to be 20 to 30 hours. So having that in the realistic job preview, making sure your managers follow up in the interview with the hourly requirements, with what their schedule is, what their availability is, making sure that matches can be so valuable. And then relationships, maybe it's an organization that's deeply enmeshed, or in this sales role, maybe this is something where it's going to be a longer sales cycle and they're going to need to go out and build relationships with people, and they may not get that reward right away. It's going to be a long relationship building activity. Letting them know that would be so key early on in the hiring process. They may self-select out, but more than likely they're going to continue, and they just have that heads up going in. We remember our first moments, our first touch points in the hiring process so much better than kind of what's in the middle that can get lost. So educating early is key and is the path to success. So that gives you a little bit more about the realistic job preview. Another key thing that we're doing here is we're sharing potential drawbacks, right? We're sharing that, okay, this, you're going to encounter some failure. We're going to be holding you accountable. We want you to put in a little bit extra time if you're salaried in general. So people who are successful tend to do that. So we're telling them things that are, maybe some drawbacks to the job. And what is that going to accomplish? That's going to start to build some trust, some authenticity. We're demonstrating that we're authentic. And that's going to start to build that foundation. It also sets you apart. Not everyone has a realistic job preview or gives candidates feedback on how their preferences fit the nature of the role. And so it differentiates you. It starts to build that trust. And we know that, unfortunately, there's a huge trust gap in the workforce, with people not, buying into or really being hesitant to invest in the organization, whether they're a candidate or whether they're an employee. So you're starting to set that foundation of expecting honesty, being authentic early. All right. So before I hand things off to Nicole to do a live demo, I'm just going to touch briefly on the assessments as well, particularly assessments being connected to the hiring process. So you'll get to see some examples of assessments when we go through the live demo here in a moment. But when they're connected with the applicant tracking system, it just makes things so much stronger. So when they're connected to the applicant tracking system, they're deployed at the right time, you're ensuring that there's that consistent communication to every candidate about the assessment. You can have reminders built in. So we tend to see that having a 24-hour reminder and then maybe a 72-hour reminder is just so helpful for getting candidates across that finish line. So basically, because our systems are fully integrated, we're able to see, or our system reads, okay, Jane hasn't completed the assessment yet, sends in a reminder that's personalized, that's engaging. we really want to know more about you. Communicating the why as well of the assessment is so important. So, why we're doing this. We want to support you if you're hired. We want to make sure this is a great opportunity for us both. That can be so helpful when you're doing this. And then it just creates that seamless candidate experience. Candidates aren't having to go over here to complete the assessment when they completed the application here. So it's all together. And then our system is mobile friendly, as well as ATS OnDemand, CorvirtusHire, our partnership with them. So that's fantastic. It creates just a really great experience. And then with that full integration between us, sometimes there's questions about what that really means. And what that means is that the assessments are going to be delivered right away when you click to have them sent or have them automatically sent. The candidates are going to get the assessments at the point that you intend. And then the results are going to be populated live. So if you, let's say, have you're a bank and you have a candidate, a potential job candidate walk in, they can take the assessment on their phone. Maybe, you're really wanting to fill this position or move things forward. So you'll have the assessment right away to be able to interview them if you so chose, if for those walk-ins or for those people that, maybe you're communicating with through email. Oh yeah, I could be available this afternoon. Can you do this assessment? The assessment's going to be available right away. And that's all included in the cost of service. There's no additional add-on fees for that integration. So as you can imagine, that starts to build faster time to hire by having everything in one place. It makes things easier for your managers. We work in a lot of fields, like I've been highlighting here, healthcare, restaurants, manufacturing, where there might not be as much of a talent acquisition team. It's more your managers that are doing a lot of the work. And so that really takes a lot of weight off their plates to be able to hire quickly. All right. So, Nicole, I think now would be a great time to hand things off to you to maybe talk a little bit more about the interface between us and CorvirtusHire and ATS OnDemand and the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, before we kind of get started, of course, in speaking on showing a little bit of that realistic job preview and the ATS side, and also how those assessments are really tied nicely together. But a few things that are just really kind of a key important factor in this process is that it's improving the experiences on both sides, not just on your candidate side, but also on that recruiter experience as well. So not just, and we're going to continue probably saying the word streamline, but it is going to definitely drive that home with the data that you're going to see from the candidates that you're getting from, but also the ease of use and the way that goals and tasks can be completed by your recruiters or hiring managers at the company. It's going to give you that mobile experience where candidates can apply on any type of device and process. So candidates can apply from cell phone, tablet, desktop to easily apply to the system, and then also go into that assessment process. Where Jen, of course, even has mentioned how those reminders can even be sent out to drive up those rates and the completion of the success of those candidates. So not only will they can be turned right into the assessment once when they apply, they're also going to receive a text message right away. So a candidate, if they're applying and maybe exit out of the page, they're going to still get a text message to alert them, hey, there's an assessment that's associated to this job. It's really going to be beneficial for you to complete this. That also goes to an email. So they're going to get both communications if those are enabled in the account to be able to notify the user or the candidate. This really is going to be a benefit for you to complete, as you're not done with the application just yet. There's still that assessment that needs to be done. And of course, it's geared with that mobile type of process on whether it's any of those devices that we just spoke on. But then, of course, coming into the system, and as the recruiter is going to see this information, they're going to be able to see that status update. It's going to, of course, and every company we work with is slightly different. Some companies love to have those results and have automation in place. And we're going to see that today, of course, but also some of that automation. What does that mean? Are they just going to be automatically getting an email response or something along those lines? It can automatically update these candidates into some of those positive recruit flows. So for an example, you might have some results that say that they're recommended, not recommended, and maybe even ones that are still pending. You may want to look at the ones that are recommended first before some of those other options. you may want to send reminders on out to those ones that are still pending. Or, of course, if you know that for some of the jobs you need them to be in a recommended type of status, you don't have to worry about screening and wasting some of that valuable time you may have in a daily process to look at some of those not qualified possible folks. So that's going to be something that's going to streamline that recruiter process just one step further, making sure that the candidates are evaluated with some of those needs that are important to your company, but also finding the true potential and valuing your time in that daily basis of of those everyday activities. And then, of course, as we definitely will speak on a few key features in the system here today as well, we're going to speak on some of those different tools in regards to, automation, as we spoke on with emails, texting, and some additional tools like reporting and onboarding. Some really key important factors to drive on in, once again, those assessments, any analytics, and everyday recruiting activities that is beneficial to the company and to really helping your hiring strategies from point A all the way to point B to be able to finalize that entire effective recruiting process. And now I think it's going to be time for us to hop on into seeing a live demo of that process. So let me actually pull on open my screen here for today, as I'm going to segue on out of the system really briefly for us to see some of the abilities in regards to the realistic job preview, as we mentioned just before. So as I share my screen here today, oh, okay, let me try to share this one more time. All right. Now, this is going to be from outside of the system. The first section I wanted to speak on was that realistic job preview. So, exactly as Jen mentioned, and kind of really just hitting this home and what this type of process and how we've built this with some of our current clients today, is that it's just a nice way of kind of informing your candidates up front of some expert or some details of what's really important down the line to your company. So, some key things that or one company has implemented here today has some of those different questions on what best describes them. How would they describe their time that they put into their work on a daily basis? Building some of their relationships. And if you notice here, they actually need to fill on out some of this information before being able to continue into the application process. So this might be, and not for every company, it might be something very beneficial to let your candidates be aware of what some of your goals are, your nature, your culture in the prior process before even accessing that application. And that's where we've built on out this type of option for you to be able to gather this from the candidate perspective. And of course, if everything matches on point, they're then able to continue on into that application process. So it is something that has a nice structure, once again, of being able to achieve this, as they can see if we scroll back on up. The job description and details all on the career page. But prior to even getting on into that, there's even some simple instructions. They need to complete that realistic job preview. And then they're going to be brought on into the application process, uploading their resume, answering some screening questions. And then, of course, they're going to complete that assessment process. So, am I going on through and actually knowing that there's a multi step factor to complete this? As Jenna's kind of mentioned already on our call here today, there's going to be candidates you want to see that they're going to take that time. The value of those candidates, they'll actually complete that process. And if those core values and details are important to the team and to be able to really help you screen some of those candidates, you'll be able to do so and set on up a type of process very similar to this example as we're seeing here today. But now that brings me on into the next portion of our process, which is really going to be the exciting part, is also how the candidates can apply and come on into the actual ability of completing the application and getting into those screening assessments. And I actually have one of my test career pages here today. Now, of course, many of our companies that are integrated with either CorvirtusHire or ATS OnDemand, you already have that custom career page built on out. But for anybody that is new, of course, to our call here today, the nice thing about the ATS is you will have your own designated mobile career friendly page that is hosted and linked to your ATS account. And those job opportunities will be listed from when you activate them to get them posted as soon as possible. So once those positions are posted and listed for any visibility, you're going to see that that job is now going to be reviewable there for candidates to easily find and apply to as soon as they need to. And once again, here's my sales manager job as our example for today. And we work with the simplest, easy application process. So this one, all I need to do is plug on in my email address to begin my application. And I'm going to be brought right on into that application to continue. Where the candidate information is very standard in detail, I'm going to pre-populate some of my details today. But as I scroll through, notice it's very common information like their contact details. A little bit further, we'll see some phone number options. And of course, as we mentioned about texting, which we will speak and talk to today, if I provide my mobile phone number and opt in to receive a text message, this will then, of course, allow the recruiters or any managers at your company to receive that communication in that instance. That'll also drive home that ability of getting that assessment sent to their phone number as well. So you don't have to worry about something being sent to a spam or junk folder. If that number is listed, it'll send a message to their email, to their phone number for them to also complete those assessments and any future recruiting conversations as well. We can choose to upload documents if we need to do so. Of course, for today's testing purposes, I'm just going to attach one as an example, but there are document uploads, education and employment field questions as well. And then lastly is going to be one of the other beneficial factors, which could be associated very similar to some of your assessment details. There's just some standard screening questions. And this might be some questions you might be asking in regards to, are you certain years of age? Do you have a certain degree or a license in a field that we may need? And these questions can be all job specific, so they don't have to be attached to every position, but you can create them to help, once again, maybe filter some basic requirements on some candidates who are top notch or maybe not so qualified, just of some of those key details you're looking to gather on. And then lastly, of course, we're going to be brought on into if you are subject to compliance or even just wanting to still gather some affirmative action detail. You can, of course, get some disability and veteran information here before we will be segued into the actual assessment process. And by submitting that application, notice I'm instantly brought on into my Corvirtus assessment. I don't need to worry about being, once again, exiting out of this page. But if that is ever the case, or if a candidate may think that they're completed and submitted, I just received to my phone a text message and also to my email that there's still that assessment associated, which will drive me right back to the same current spot. And bringing this on through, I'm just going to simply kind of take us on through the assessment rather briefly here today. But you're going to be able to see the different options you created. Now, Jen, I believe you may be able to speak to some of the different assessments that might be in place as there's different industries.
Yes.
I'm sure there's different ones that might be, or that could be set up for a company.
Right. So this is a perfect opportunity while you're clicking through this. Thank you. So we have ready to implement. So, ready to go assessments for a broad range of different industries and areas. So, we've been talking about restaurants, restaurant server, healthcare, CNA, nurse, etc. We can also tailor to your specific competencies and culture. The colors and the look and feel can also be customized very easily to your brand, having your logo, having your colors, just like the beautiful careers page example that Nicole shared. And I also want to point out the tracking bar. So you can see for the beginning, this really communicated that there were 2 tests in addition to the entire hiring process being communicated on the first page that Nicole showed. We could see that there's kind of 2 parts to the assessment. We were in the first, now we're in the second. If there were 3 different tests or different experiences, there would be 3. So it's very easy to know where we're at. And the candidate can save and exit very easily. That's very clear to them. And their ability to ask to reach our team for help is also very easy to access at the bottom as well. So those are all some things that we put into place to make a great candidate experience. If they were on a mobile phone, the scale would adjust to be more compact, but so that they could still see everything on the screen. So, there's no awkward moving their finger around to try to get all the test content into one page. And the same for the application and all the other pieces that we have. And then just another note on the realistic job preview that Nicole showed at the beginning, they're always free to move forward. They will get feedback on how they connect with the job and your culture and all those things, but they're always free to move forward after that. So it's just accomplishing that educational piece for them.
Awesome.
Perfect
Well,
timing.
thank you. Yeah, no, that's great. So thank you for definitely speaking on that as I kind of clicked on through. And of course, this was just a test example. So when we submit this and see these results, we're going to see, of course, how that comes back on into the system at real time. So now, thank you for completing your assessment and the effort. You're now able to go ahead and continue into another page or, of course, your daily process. So that's all from outside of the system from the candidate perspective. But when we come on into the ATS itself, now I'm going to have that new candidate that has applied, but also if I come on into my main candidates page as well, this is where I personally love the integration with Corvirtus and how those results are easily and able to be seen prior to even getting into a candidate profile is going to be this candidate screen here. The screen is customizable to each user of the system, but the nice thing is those results are right here standing on out to you. So of course, as we've test applied many times before, I have quite a few candidates here, but notice ones that say do not recommend, no assessment, pending, recommended. I'm going to be able to see, once again, that could be where some of that automation comes into play. When we come on into a candidate profile, let's say we use Maxine as an example here today. She might have been moved on into a new status because we knew she's new, she was recommended, and she's moved right on into that stage really easily. Any of those other ones that were maybe do not recommended. In that recruit flow dropdown, they might be an assessment of assessment not recommended. We could set this on up. It's customizable for each company, which is a really great process. I even have some companies who just want everybody moved into new. They still want to be able to come back and rescreen some candidates as maybe they just answered a few key questions wrong and they want to be able to maybe refollow back up with a candidate. Really great ways of, once again, automating your process, or if it's just something to help you as a benchmark to maybe see some additional details prior to screening and interviewing them. Notice those results are listed on this candidate profile here. So as we mentioned, that real-time fashion of showing those results are going to be here for you to be able to see. This candidate is recommended. Like Jen mentioned, you'll be able to see the report and all the information, maybe some additional questions and areas you may want to touch on. You're going to be able to see that here and review this, maybe print this or share this on out if needed. But of course, it's going to reside inside of this candidate profile for you to ever see and determine on. And if we go
And
back
one
on in,
piece,
oh, sorry,
sorry,
Jen, go ahead.
one piece that
Yeah.
I love is that from having hired myself, you can easily see the candidate's resume, any other documents in there without having to download it. You might not ever even need to download it. You can just access it from this candidate profile, super easy. Just to ease, so wonderful to keep track of things.
Yeah. And that's one great thing that we're going to see here today. Notice, of course, not only will we see those results of those assessments, this is where the key function of the candidate profile really comes on into. Now, there are a few things we're going to briefly speak on as we're not going to go into a whole in-depth of the entire system. But a few key points I would like to mention on as it kind of goes very hand in hand with everything we spoke on from candidates applying, getting some of those assessment results and reviewing them inside of the system as the recruiter. But then some of the additional tools in the ATS that could be very beneficial to a recruiter, to your company, or even those managers that might be coming on in and assisting on some of the basic key reporting and hiring metrics. And when we can see here, like Jen mentioned, any documents will be viewable down in the document viewer down below, just as if they sent on over an attachment, really easy for you to access in. We spoke about automation. This candidate was automatically moved into assessment not recommended, but there's email automation as well tied to your recruit flow process. Where let's say I still like Nicole, I want to send on over an email maybe for an interview. I'm going to move her on in and it's going to send on out an automated email I attach to this recruit flow. I can easily communicate with them with that email process. But as we are speaking on communication, there's also that text messaging ability. So here's that text message we just spoke about a few moments ago. You filled out an application with Corvirtus. We'd like for you to take the assessment as you completed your application. If you've already taken this, you can ignore this message as it's just a reminder to complete this during that process. So you'll see that archive conversation and also for you to easily communicate with your candidates here, whether it's in regards to scheduling interviews, following up on if they completed the assessment, possibly if they're still pending, or maybe it's just in regards to having a few quick questions after speaking with them on the phone and you're rescheduling and maybe just needing to follow on up through a text. You can easily communicate with those candidates this way, as it's a streamlined process where, once again, it's getting instantly to their phone and you don't have to worry about having a separate cell phone. It's linked to your ATS account. So it's one account number for everybody who has ATS access. And you'll be able to communicate with them through this process, as well as your text messaging center in the top right corner, where it'll indicate any responses. And for you to get through back, you don't have to worry about being just in this candidate profile. And of course, speaking in regards to just not only, some of those details and communication, comment feedback and quick notes, you can leave feedback on these individuals, making sure that candidates are aware of some of the details you might get in an interview. You want to be able to follow back up maybe on some of those questions they answered on. You may want other team members to be aware of some feedback of speaking with somebody. You could simply just leave a note and say, you know what? I left a message to schedule interview, and I just want to simply leave this here. So if anybody comes across Nicole's profile, I know that that's a great point and left on. But I did want to briefly speak on reports because I know that we're coming on up and we want to leave time for any questions and some future trends, of course. But speaking on reporting, they're all different ad hoc reports. One of my favorites is definitely going to be the build your own. But some common ones that you may see, and in a company that is very important and data driven, you may want to have a time to fill. You may want to know a cost per hire report, different sourcing reports. Where are candidates applying from? They're here for you to build on out as we've had those skeleton shells of those reports for you to build on. Notice it hovers over some of that synopsis of what each report can gather. But my favorite is in some of these reports here. Notice you'll have the ability of including those assessment results. So once again, that's something that's really key and beneficial that you can select certain fields, what's most important to you and your team and that data that's driven in the system. You can pick and choose those areas and be able to share that, as every report can be exported into an Excel spreadsheet, saved if you're running this in the future, or once again, being able to access some of those really important metrics at any given point. And then lastly, I did want to speak on onboarding, because onboarding is a great way of, once again, sending on out some electronic paperwork. Now, with onboarding here today, you have the ability of being able to, once again, we send on out maybe offer letters. It may be different details in regards to background check consent forms, maybe anything that you're doing in a pre-hire process that might be electronic in your company and you want to achieve in the onboarding type of process. Here today, I have my test candidate that I could simply come on through and send on out and confirm my employee information, as their name and hiring details will be included inside of that. I can make sure that I could set up different team notifications, alerting my team members, maybe a new hire's coming on board. We need a work email address done. Maybe a work uniform needs to be ordered, fingerprinted, whatever actions. I can alert my team that this needs to be done at this step. And also assigning and previewing those documents before they're sent on out to my candidate. So if I actually log on into a custom portal here today, here I'm going to be able to review that actual portal of what you created. So you'll be able to see a nice welcome message, those screening documents down below. So I'm able to review that I-9, that offer letter, wherever this needs to be completed by a candidate. It can all be done, once again, streamlining through this process. So I did want to definitely speak on this, as I know we have a few more moments left on our call here, and there's a few other areas we did want to speak on. But this is a really great way of still streamlining everything we just kind of walk through, from job postings, assessments, reviewing those results, and even continuing that process all the way through onboarding and welcoming some of those new hires on board with some of this electronic paperwork that could ever be needed.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Jen.
All right. Well, before we wrap up here today, we did want to cover just a few takeaways of the ultimate result, the goal, the outcome that you're seeking to achieve by choosing to have an ATS or switching your ATS and adding to the hiring process with something as critical as assessments and some of these other tools like realistic job previews for engaging your candidates. So we've been talking a lot about healthcare and restaurants as examples here. We worked with a few unit, large, long-term care, different types of care for seniors and for people in need of long-term care. And we worked very diligently with them around turnover in their frontline roles. They also had, as happens in a lot of industries, intense competition with other healthcare providers to work to get losing candidates for a few dollars more, just really needing to be able to compete. And they thought that a key need, and we did as well, of course, key need was to differentiate the patient experience, the resident experience, as well as the employee experience with their mission and culture. So each job group, whether it was environmental or culinary or frontline nursing aides, had their own unique assessment. Everything was grounded in their culture, connected to how they interviewed. And we were able to really do a lot of that, measuring different pieces of the employee journey to build a stronger process. So in just tracking their time to hire, that decreased time to hire overall, the volume that the number of hours their managers and their hiring team was spending, their HR team was spending on hiring went down dramatically, as well as turnover. And even just regulatory issues decrease, which is so key in healthcare. Tanya's going to walk through an example within the restaurant industry.
Hi. So this is somebody that we worked with long term, a larger company, have many restaurant locations, and they were spending a lot of time. Their managers were spending a lot of time managing that hiring process, which took away from the operational where they were really needed. They also started to notice that there were inconsistent performance standards throughout each location, and so they wanted something to remedy that. And we're like, yeah, we can help you out with that. So we work side by side with them to create a custom solution, a custom assessment solution that aligned with their cultural and their needs, their day-to-day operational needs. We then brought in ATS OnDemand, who helped streamline that selection process with all the great things that Nicole talked about earlier. So by doing those things, we were able to streamline that candidate experience so that their experience was better coming in. There were also more quality candidates, so that means less time that hiring managers are spending with unqualified candidates. And that was really, we were able to solve their challenges that they were having at the very beginning.
That's what it's about, is getting your vision for success, the key pain points, the key opportunities that you're wanting to maximize, and building that going forward. So with that, we're about to wrap up. I think we're just about out of time. So I want to just recap really quick what we were talking about. It doesn't look like we have any outstanding questions. Some questions that we've gotten in the past is just the completion rate with the assessments. We're talking about adding all these pieces into your hiring ecosystem. What's the impact? We're seeing right now completion rates as high as 80% or higher with the assessment, which is fantastic. And part of that's largely because of just the intentionality behind it and delivering that great candidate experience with a platform like CorvirtusHire, driven by our partners at ATS OnDemand. Some other questions that you sent over earlier for us were things like, are there any costs associated with reporting? There are no costs associated with reporting. It's an all-in solution, like Nicole brilliantly talked about at the beginning. There's no additional fees for levied by CorvirtusHire or ATS OnDemand for any integration, just what the provider might charge. and you're really able to closely monitor the key results that you want to for efficiency, for effectiveness, for quality of hire. We, as a passionate provider, love to be able to offer you any way we can to measure quality of hire going forward. So whether that's giving us reports of turnover and us matching that to candidates to be able to see, well, how are these tools moving the needle on retention long term, on performance? If you do a quarterly performance review or 30, 60, 90-day review of new hires, let's take that data and see how it's connected to the assessment results and how we can make things stronger. Or even something simple like sending out a feedback survey to your team of, how is the ATS working? What can we improve? How can we help you? Can be so meaningful for moving things forward. It's all about building that exceptional, differentiating candidate experience and getting you the information that you need so you can start nurturing and growing your new hires and achieving your intended results. So with that, thank you so much for coming today. It looks like that is all of the questions that we had from everything. So we thank you so much for your time. We'll follow up with some more useful tools and background information, and we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.